So, this video was made for the UFR video contest, which itself is an effort to generate more discussion around and about Team Fortress 2. Which is good. I like Team Fortress 2. I love it even. I downloaded Steam to play Team Fortress 2 back in 2012 or whatever. I'm not good at it, and my hours played pale in comparison to many if not even most other players. But my other most played games pale in comparison to Team Fortress 2, and while it may no longer be my favorite game, it has held a special place in my heart for most of my living memory. So why do I feel myself hesitating to recommend it? Sure, it's old and outdated, but my main console is still an Xbox 360. I don't really care about that. Sure, it's extremely punishing for new players because a large portion of the community has been playing since before my little sister was born. But no, it's not that either. And while I think Zesty Jesus and everyone else who has complained about the sorry state of the queue system makes good points, the conclusion often comes down to, this is unacceptable in a modern game. And while that's true, I think tying it all together by comparing Team Fortress 2 to a modern game misses something important. Hear me out here. When we criticize Team Fortress 2 as a modern game, we're missing something crucial. This game is older than GTA 4. Here in the year of our Lord, 2026, GTA 4 is a time capsule. The clothes, the restaurants, the war on terror preventing you from accessing other areas in the early game. Everything comes together to create a picture of what Americans, or more specifically Dan Houser, wanted the future to remember about the late 2000s in America. The good, the bad, and the broken. But there's a small problem with that. The music license agreements were made on a renewed basis, and eventually Rockstar, allegedly not being made of money, decided to stop renewing the deals that ran out. If you launch GTA 4 on a console linked to the internet now, you can't launch the game without downloading an update that removes large portions of the music catalog. And you can't even upload your own music to replace it unless you have a PC and know how to navigate game files well enough to drag and drop your own files into the radio music folder. So without altering the game in a dubiously legal manner, you cannot play the fucking game that you bought. Now this is not just a loss for gamers, but also for preservation, for history. And that may feel like an exaggeration, but in the words of DJ Peach Cobbler,
imagine being able to interact with a digital recreation of Rome, made by Romans, which is filled with Roman commentary on the ills of their society.
That's what GTA 4 was, or at least it was reaching in that direction. But not as much now. It's more like a simulacra of Rome, where you cannot hear the voice of Ovid or the Gracchi brothers or Caesar, because the Senate was afraid of the power their words would wield. And you may balk at the fact that I'm comparing GTA 4 radio music to rebellious Roman orators, but if you look at what's been removed, it holds up better than you may think. Of note, we have Fascination by David Bowie, Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath, and most tellingly, Home is Where the Hatred Is by Gil Scott-Heron, also the author of Whitey on the Moon, and The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. By this standard, Team Fortress 2 is very lucky. Not only has Valve continued to support the game with both servers and for a long time semi-regular updates, it also hasn't done anything to ruin the core gameplay. Even the queuing issues I briefly mentioned earlier aren't about the actual gameplay, they're about not being able to play for long enough to enjoy the game, which itself is still enough to bring in new players. And so we return to the original question. Why do I hesitate to recommend this game to new players? Well, the real answer to that question is the same reason I've stopped playing casual mode entirely. Toxicity. Now that might sound odd to you, the viewer. Team Fortress 2 is not usually associated with toxicity. In fact, it's usually seen as less toxic than most other games. But that perspective is flawed in two major ways. The first is one that many games have to grapple with nowadays. There are a lot of people on the internet who think they know how a game or community is because they partake in discourse and consume content about it, but they don't ever actually play the game. The best example of this that comes to mind is the Disco Elysium community, where longtime Disco Elysium fan finally plays Disco Elysium is, at this point, a running joke. And for the sake of transparency, this is also the biggest problem with my whole argument. I love this game, but in addition to the disillusionment I'm about to talk about, I've been going to college in Appalachia for the past couple of years, so my Wi-Fi has been consistently so bad that it turns any multiplayer FPS into a turn-based strategy game. But this problem is worsened in Team Fortress 2 because all of your favorite content creators may practically be playing different games. For gits and shiggles, let's just compare Zesty Jesus and Uncle Dane. Zesty's community server rule set is described as follows. My servers have random bullet spread enabled, truces disabled, and DDoS mitigation. Whereas Dane's servers have... These are technically the same game, but the sum of the rule sets creates actual matches that feel fundamentally different. Por ejemplo, you cannot do the funny class stacking in Uncletopia, but on the other hand, you will never have more than 3 spies and or snipers on your team at a time. These conditions create communities who take the game more or less seriously based on the tone set by the rules we're all playing by. Zesty Jesus servers, I've heard, tend to be more irreverent, while Uncletopia is a sweat factory where actual comp players go to practice casually. The second major flaw in Team Fortress 2's non-toxic reputation is the subjectivity of toxicity itself. Like, what does toxicity mean to you? Well, the average gamer sees toxicity largely as poor sportsmanship. Teabagging your foes and calling that same foe a slur are both seen as toxic behaviors, and that's about it. No thought about, say, which of those behaviors is worse, or how we as a community should respond to or address it. That player is toxic, and toxicity is bad. We disavow toxicity. But if you decide to stick up for the person being called slurs, to stand against the bully like we were all taught to in elementary school, you will find yourself being treated as toxic too. Why are you taking this so seriously? It's just a game. It's not that serious. Why do you have to get all political? Gamers allegedly don't like politics. Allegedly, they don't want to make people uncomfortable. Allegedly, it's about people's freedom of speech. But if it's about those things, why do I get kicked for saying to stop using slurs? Well, to many of those people, political means anything I disagree with. There's some nuance, of course. In the video, How to Radicalize a Normie, Innuendo Studios points out that a more accurate revision of that statement might be anything on which the community disagrees is political. So, taking our example from earlier, everyone agrees that the toxic player is an asshole. Probably even they know that they're an asshole, and either don't care or relish in that fact. But when I pipe up and say, you should stop, or we should kick this guy for using slurs, people start to disagree. When a vote gets called, maybe enough people don't vote yes. Maybe the guy is emboldened and starts saying even worse shit. Everyone else's game is worse, and the worst part is that instinctually, people don't blame the asshole using slurs and making the game worse for all involved. No, they blame the person who stood up to them. You may be thinking that this is all anecdotal evidence, to which I would say, shut the fuck up, Miles Edgeworth. We aren't in court. But in all seriousness, this is an observed fact of human behavior. In fact, it's an example of Karl Popper's paradox of intolerance playing out in real time. A toxic person showed their full ass, and by tolerating that toxicity, all the server did was wind up removing the person speaking up in the actual spirit of tolerance. It sucks, man. Before our last section, I want to call back to that Zesty Jesus video where he makes a bunch of really good points about how the Meet Your Match system ruined casual play, and he provides a really girthy stack of data to go with it. He also mentions something that I don't think is explained by those things. At one point, Zesty wonders aloud why El Maxo, the fastest growing TF2 channel on the platform for quite a long time, made such a sudden pivot to a BreadTube channel that died out fairly quickly, especially when the demand for new TF-tubers outpaces the supply so much. And I don't think a shitty queue system explains that. But you know what does? Being sick of sharing a community with assholes and bigots and sometimes straight up actual Nazis. Team Fortress 2 has always been something of a haven for outcasts on the internet. Furries and queer folks and anarchists and commies and yes, even Nazis. But in the age of the Elon and Alligator Alcatraz and more laws banning trans kids from sports than there are actual trans kids in sports, tolerating the intolerant is just more of the same. To many, to me, when these bigotries and ideas start pervading not just our real world, but also the games we play, it's no longer a beautiful haven where even the worst of us put aside our differences to escape reality in the game we all love together. It's just an extension of the reality we're all trying to escape, and that makes people want to stop playing. So what do we do about it? Well, thankfully, it's not too difficult for us to deal with this problem, as long as we show a united front. All it really takes is not tolerating bigotry and trusting those who point it out first. Next time someone is using racist or ableist slurs, vote yes to kick them out. Hell, call the vote yourself. And when they start whining about people being intolerant or political, remember who started it. And make sure that they face some kind of consequence, even if it's as simple as being kicked out of the match that they're currently playing. Because in a world where we see horrendous ideas, statements, and people go completely unpunished all the time, I don't want to choose to spend my free time in a place where the same thing is true. And you shouldn't either. You're better than that. You deserve better than that. We deserve better than that. Thank you for your time and for your attention. Stay hydrated. Arrivederci.
Still here.
Cool, because I actually had one more section I originally wanted to squeeze in here about how privilege factors into this discussion, but it was all just too much for this first video. But if you like this and or learned something new and want to see that follow-up, let me know down below. Thanks for sticking around. Arrivederci, amici. That's a fucking wrap.